What was it all for? I mean, you play 3, maybe 4 incredible JRPGs to completion, probably gonna take you over 100 hours each game if you're stopping to smell the roses, and way more if you're going for any kind of completionist angle here. And you beat the games, and you set the controller down, you turn the console off, and you ask yourself, why did I do all that? I think it's a fair question, one that deserves to be talked about and analyzed. What really is the importance of Xenoblade Chronicles in the grand scheme of things? Now, I'm going to be talking about Xenoblade Chronicles for the purpose of this video, but you can honestly make the argument I'm about to make for, hell, any video game of your choosing, or any piece of media, or any story. Because what I'm about to talk about are kind of universal truths that I hold, in terms of the overall importance of storytelling. Now, for years now, I've gravitated towards story-based video games, but I can never really put my thumb on the reason why I like them so much. Why I found myself so invested in these characters and these worlds and these stories and messages. Why I found myself hanging by the edge of my seat to find out what happens next. At the end of the day, does it even matter? I mean, they're all just works of fiction. Some people in some room that I'm not familiar with put their thoughts down on paper. Or I mean, in this day and age, probably a Google Doc, let's be honest. From all those meandering thoughts, those disconnected connections of synapses, sparked imagination, created worlds and characters and stories and messages and themes that resonate so much with me and to many other people. But why? Why do we gravitate towards storytelling so much? And does this hold true for everybody? No. People like different things, and that's entirely fine. But for me, one of the reasons I gravitated towards Xenoblade Chronicles in the first place was just because of how large and interesting the worlds were. Hell, you look at the worlds of Xenoblade X, or 2, which were the 2 first Xenoblade games I ever played. It's easy to see why I fell in love with the series. They're large and encompassing, they engross you, they pull you in and refuse to let go. Then you cut to Xenoblade 1, at least for me, the worlds of the Rayanis and the Mechonis, and how imposing both of these figures are, you're climbing up them to tell the story. Xenoblade 3, a world trapped in perpetual war. Ooh, interesting. Combining locations and themes and motifs from Xenoblades 1 and 2. Okay, what are we doing here? Talk to me. You beat these games and you step aside and you say, what was it all for? Well, you may also ask the question, was it worth it? And honestly, I think that answer is going to depend upon the individual, because I would say it was worth it. I enjoyed my time. I was engrossed and captivated by these stories, by these characters, by what these games were trying to tell. And I feel like we can transition to a discussion on storytelling as a whole and why it's so important, because to me, one of the beautiful things about storytelling in different mediums is that it's capable of taking these grandiose themes or concepts and explore them through relatable eyes, through characters that we can build, albeit a one-sided, but a relationship nonetheless, where we can learn their backstory, learn their likes and dislikes, what makes them tick. And through their eyes, a story can be told. A story that may have a point or may be left to the player, the consumer, to conclude on their own. May be an emotional outlet for people so they can have just a way to experience certain emotions they may not be able to normally express through other means. Hell, let's be honest, not every day you're gonna have the level of hype you probably had when Rex awakened the third Aegis sword, let's be honest here. So I think stories can definitely be an emotional outlet for people, especially when it's a game or story touches on subjects that are close to home for the individual. Because to me, a lot of the times, I tend to find that a person's preference or a person's favorite story that they hold near and dear to their own heart, a lot of the times, it comes down to how they are able to relate to that one individual's given story. And it doesn't even just have to be about being an emotional outlet for people. It can also just be as a way to convey these different themes and messages that you may not ordinarily think about, but give you fresh perspective on them through the eyes of these characters. For instance, Xenoblade as a series tackles with the subject of moving into the future in different ways. Xenoblade 1 is all about moving into the future and doing so with your own free will to make a future of your own design. One where, sure, you can't write a script for how everything's going to go, but you can at least make your own choices. Xenoblade 2 is all about, hey, there's no finish line, there's no one set Elysium, one set paradise for you to find, and then everything's all dandy, it's all good. No, it doesn't exist. It's a hard-fought future, where day in and day out you have to toil and strive, and bleed and claw your way to a future of your own design. Because at any given opportunity, it can slip through your fingers. So you have to put the work in, day out and day in, to make sure that it doesn't. To make sure that you can create a future that you can be proud of. To be able to look at the road that you traveled and be proud of. Xenoblade 3 is all about, hey, if you get too stuck up on the present, too focused on the here and now, or the past, and the emotional difficulties that the past can honestly give all of us, then it's not only self-destructive for you, the individual, but can be self-destructive for those around you. That's essentially the story of N and how they clung to Ionios as endless now, despite the fact all these annihilation events were going off everywhere, that Ionios was on a clock. It wasn't going to last forever. Eventually it was going to just eat itself apart, and everyone else was stuck in this perpetual loop of war with Kevas and Agnes. And even if it's hard, and even if it's painful in the here and now, sometimes you have to be willing to accept that parting, accept that sorrow and that pain, to be able to move into the future. Because, again, kind of similarly to the theme of Xenoblade 1, you have to be able to take your own choice, keep it close to your heart, and move into the future, so that you can continue to make your own choices with your own free will. Now, that was the theme of Ouroboros, and why they did what they did at the end of the game. They didn't want to apart from one another, but it was the right thing to do, because this world was inherently toxic to everyone. The status quo that they were all living in, that cycle, then the entire institution of Ionios, it wasn't healthy. So even though they managed to find some semblance of happiness and relationship and companionship within this broken, battered, bleeding world, it was still not meant to be. It wasn't right. Because they would be, if they stayed there, they would be making the same exact mistake that N and M made all those years ago. They had to be willing to part for the here and now, rip the band-aid off, let it sting, but over time, it can heal. And sure, in the future, they may be able to work towards a future where they get able to reunite. I still think that's probably what the plot of Xenoblade 4 is going to be. But you have to be willing to take that step, even if it hurts you. Like, these are themes and motifs that can impact a lot of people in a positive way if they haven't been exposed to this idea before. And let's be honest, how many times are you going to have these existential conversations with friends or family? Hey, mate, Jake! Hey, what you think about the future, though? You feel like we should just stay in the present now and just keep going in the future? What you feel about that? Hey, Paul! Hey, Paul, what you feel about if there was a paradise? Hey, Paul, you think it would exist? You think we should go for it or just try and make good of what we have here? More often than not, you're probably not having those types of conversations, right? Or doing deep character analyses just randomly. Some people may, and that's probably what you do in D&D, let's be honest, but what these games and what these stories are capable of doing is putting you into a world, putting you in these characters' shoes so you can almost, quote-unquote, live, for lack of a better phrase, as these characters. Take a mile in their shoes. So you can experience it. You can form these, albeit one-sided, but relationships nonetheless with these characters, and you can glean what information or what lesson or moral you want out of them. Because a game may have a set-in-stone theme, a message, a singular purpose that it's trying to instill upon the player, but your interpretation of that can be wildly different based upon the individual, can have different meaning depending upon what you yourself have experienced in your own life, the own struggles and hardships that you've faced and overcame, or you're facing right now. And let's be honest, we've all probably experienced loss, or having friends drift away. So a story like Xenoblade 3, where that's kind of the central focus of the ending, can resonate very strongly with people, because they can find some way to relate their own experiences to that world, and then all of a sudden they have an in, so the message that Xenoblade 3 is trying to instill upon the player can resonate even more. That's one of the powerful things about storytelling, in my opinion, and one of the things that makes it so utterly fascinating, is what is this story trying to tell you? It's a puzzle that you can put together piece by piece with every little bit of information that you have at your disposal. One of the reasons I love theory crafting so much, and I love making theories on games and upcoming games like Xenoblade or Final Fantasy games, because I view it like a puzzle, trying to get in this head of the writers. What are they thinking? What are they trying to tell here? What direction are they trying to go here? What are they hinted at already? It's kind of a fun little puzzle for me to solve, but when I'm actively experiencing that story, it's, okay, what are you trying to tell me here? What hints, what ways, what nuance are you trying to insert into this narrative to make it unique, to make it land in your own unique way? Because I'm not a advocate that every game needs to be completely unique in theme and purpose from one another. You can tackle very similar themes. Hell, two of my favorite game series of all time, well, two of my favorite games of all time is Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3, but also Final Fantasy XIV and Endwalker tackles a very Xenoblade-esque theme, with always being able to get back up and walk into the future. Maybe I just have a preference for that style of message for games, because that's also kind of the theme of Nier Automata in a lot of ways, which is my favorite game of all time. So maybe that style or message just resonates strongly with me, and that's one of the reasons that the games in my top 10 probably tackle that idea in some shape or form. But you may have a different thing that completely resonates with you, or you have a different, unique way to interpret these stories, so that impacts you even more. That's important, because I'm a firm believer in the idea of the death of the author is the birth of the reader, where the author can have one idea, one theme that they're trying to tell you, but the way that they consume, the way that you yourself interpret that story, to me, is more valuable than the intended message. Because whatever lesson or moral you're able to glean out of it, whatever way or solace you can get out of that experience, that to me is one of the beautiful things about stories, is how we can find relatability in these abstract fictional worlds and concepts and characters that we've never met or never met us, that aren't even real. They're just artificial creations. But the way that through relatability, through careful dialogue consideration, through world building, character development, dialogue, interactions, we can care about these characters, care about the stories that are being told to us, and how we can relate to these stories, what perspective we might be able to glean from them to help us out with our own lives, help us out with our own way of thinking. Oh, hey, I didn't think about it like that before. That's a great point. Maybe it's not about finding some kind of Elysium, finding some kind of end goal. Maybe it's about creating it in perpetuity with your own hard work going into the future. It can help give you a purpose, or just strengthen your own resolve, fortify your own convictions, or turn them all up in their head and give you a new way of thinking about life itself. That to me is the importance of Xenoblade Chronicles. But again, what I've just talked about can apply to pretty much any other game or any other medium. I like video games because I like that layer of interactivity and how it helps me be immersed into these stories and into these worlds. I like the pacing of a video game. I like that level of interactivity. I like being put myself in the game character's shoes. That helps me be immersed in the world. Helps me be immersed in the story. And for many of you out there watching this video, you probably feel the same way. Or you might have your own unique perspective, your own unique takeaway that you haven't really seen people talk about online for Xenoblade. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to leave a comment down below with what you got out of your favorite Xenoblade game, or the one main takeaway you've got out of this series. I would love to hear your thoughts and hear your own perspectives and hear your own stories about this. What have you gotten out of Xenoblade? And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. I'm going to end the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.